Hi all, and welcome to part 2 of our 4-part webinar series, Learn to Fly with Juniper Networks. I'm Adam Hartley. I head up the technical team here at Westcoast for Juniper Networks, and I'm joined by David Siddle, who heads up our net new partners for Juniper Networks. So today we have a packed agenda, but by the end of today's webinar, hopefully, you'll know the current landscape for network and security, your customers' true pain points and questions to get those pain points out of them, as well as an overview of the Juniper Networks portfolio. I'm now going to be handing over to David Siddle to do a little bit of an overview of what we covered before, because as I said, this is part 2, so it's always good to understand where we were before.
Thank you very much, Adam. So previously on the webinar series, we discussed quite a large topic in my head. We talked about how, in a sales and professional environment manner, to get the ideas that Juniper presents across to a customer. This can be at any level, but more specifically targeting the boardroom conversations and how we broach those topics with customers that won't know or understand Juniper. Now, the pitch that we spoke about last time actually doesn't reference any of the products we're going to talk about today, but essentially it runs on the lines of every business has data, and adding context to that data will really help to capture what we can do to help protect it and how to secure it. Now, the pitch we covered last time was exclusively a Juniper pitch, so I hope that's going well with your customers, that you understood it, and if not, I'd certainly encourage you to call me, to speak to me, to engage with the Juniper team using juniper@westcoast.co.uk to let us help you to bring that conversation forwards. Now, the next slide, those that joined us last time would have seen already, but basically to introduce you to the Westcoast and Juniper side of things. Very recently, Westcoast have rebranded and relaunched ourselves, and that's ahead of 2018, where we're planning on making Juniper one of our biggest vendors, and we're really excited to be part of that team. Now, on the Juniper side of things, there's a Juniper operates a 3-tier partner program for its resellers. So starting, it's as easy as joining on using a web link to register as a Juniper reseller. Then with increased revenue and increased spend, we can look to transition you to what's known as a select partner for Juniper. Now, bear in mind that any level of partner has access to deal registration, to promotions, to free co-branded marketing, and also to active support from distribution on any matter with Juniper. So please do that to help you to understand Juniper. So to fully understand where Juniper fits within the networking and security landscape, we first have to understand what this networking and security landscape is as we see it, and as we see it both at Westcoast and as Juniper, but also in a broader sense. What topics do we cover? Where does Juniper sort of see itself within this environment? So every single day now, we were reminded of new ways that we have invented to be able to connect to each other, whether through smartphone apps, through IoT, through self-driving vehicles. Ultimately, all of it is powered using the IP network, and we're looking at the death of IPv4 as an outdated modem to be able to connect with one another. We're now looking to have to transition to more complicated ways of connecting. So we're sort of looking at an explosion in networking. We now need networks that are able to run more data, run faster, run in a more connected manner. And this really is where Juniper has its strength. Juniper isn't the kind of brand that's going to go out there and say, we have an IoT solution, we have a GDPR solution. What Juniper is saying is we have the capability to help you with market-leading infrastructure for you to be able to run your data-heavy networks on. And just as proof of this, Juniper's got a roadmap up to a 400 gigabytes per second line card. Now, this is very achievable with the brand new silicon that Juniper's bringing out, and in fact, it's door leading across the market for what we know of. Now, what about security? This is a question we asked last time. This is where Juniper sort of, again, sees itself in terms of all of Juniper's current messaging is around security. How do we build a network that promotes security for itself? Now, security is becoming increasingly important in the wider sense as well within the market, within the industry. So we were looking at sort of harmless attacks on things like BT, such as putting a smiley face on their homepage. That was a number of years ago, but now we're looking at very much targeted, very much advanced threats that are persistent, as well in the manner they go about doing their payload and executing within networks. And we're looking at cyber security cyber crime becoming more of an organized crime scene where there's real money and real threats to be made. Now, the cost in terms of not just revenue and fines, but also reputation for any business that's seen as being a victim of cybercrime would be devastating, I'd consider. So there's certainly the scope to start introducing ideas of security as well as networking within any customer. And this really is where Juniper sort of sees its niche in helping to provide secure networks rather than just network security. And more of that will be covered later on, especially later on within the series. Now, this slide has a lot of text on it, I appreciate, but ultimately what we're trying to say here is that Juniper's no longer a niche player. This is one of the criticisms that other networking vendors have, and one of the objections that we'll look to overcome with Juniper is the fact that within the markets that Juniper's in, Juniper's still considered a niche player against the likes of Cisco. You have to remember, Juniper's been around now for more than 20 years. And any challenger brand with more than 20-year history certainly must have some success at changing the thoughts, changing the landscape of the industry it plays in. Otherwise, how has it existed simply for that long? Now, we're looking at Juniper now that has focused all of its efforts around the security and secure data center. There's a lot of security messaging out there. And this certainly is where the largest growth areas are within the industry, and this is something that we can now lead a conversation with as Juniper sales representatives. Juniper is a safe and reliable bet. It plays in a lot of the largest markets in the world. Last time I presented some statistics, but Juniper began its history selling to service providers in the USA, and that technology has now trickled down into the branch and campus-sized devices. And that's really where Juniper has a lot of strength, the sort of the reverting from the large and broad networks and bringing that technology that powers the largest networks in the world into your branch and your campus. I'll now pass back over to my colleague Adam to take us through the Juniper Networks product portfolio.
Thanks for that, David. So now that we've understood the current landscapes, let's get into a bit more about the specifics about your customers and Juniper and how we look from an actual hardware perspective. So I've broken this into two sections because it's the easiest way to split the Juniper portfolio, which is into switching and firewalls. So this is a condensed form of Juniper's portfolio, going from our small range EX20200-C, which is our desktop version switch, all the way down into our big boys in the bottom right-hand corner, which is the EX4200, which is a complete fiber kit with additional modules. So with Juniper's switching range, the EX series is a whole big range. If you have a requirement for switching, there's no reason why not to, even if it is just to sit on top of a desk and you need 8 ports, or if you need to go all the way up and go into the data center where you need 100 gigabits transceivers, Juniper's able to help you in that. What's really cool is that I've tried to break down in the next 2 slides what actually these look to, and you'll get a copy of these slides after the webinar anyway, so don't try and scribble all this down. But it's just to highlight where Juniper's switching portfolio is and all of the different options that are available. So it just highlights the performance, but also the amount of variety there is. So it doesn't matter which of your customers that you're going to, we can actually pitch some Juniper in there, regardless if they're a small 3 or 4 person organization all the way up to big data center switching requirements. These are the big switches. So this is mainly for the large enterprise and data center grade switches. This is, as David said a few moments ago, where Juniper has its pedigree, and these are the main switches that are deployed in some of the biggest name organizations out there that you'll know. Juniper's main thing with the data center and enterprise grade switching is its performance. It's one of the best in the industry for that. So your customers' pain points when it comes to switching. So today's customers has a lot of them, which are usually unaddressed by either partners or unless they're an MSP/managed security service provider. Today's IT network is complex, siloed, and requires a lot of hours to maintain. This is mainly due to end users that are looking to lower their vendor list and are looking for ones that integrate together. There's so many different vendors that are within today's modern IT network that don't work together and collaborate when it comes to just core switching. So that's why a lot of end customers are looking to actually either consolidate on one big vendor or look for ones that actually will interoperate with each other. So what kind of questions do we need to get out? So what kind of questions do we need to start asking our customers to be able to get those pain points? Because they're not going to tell us this up front. So the key ones when I see this is, how much time are you spending on daily operations? Like a lot of IT teams are doing a lot of stuff actually manually, and that takes hours and hours and hours of time and stops them actually trying to innovate. So that's usually a good question to get out of that whole, I'm trying to actually manage a really complex network with not a lot of staff, and I've got too many vendors and I'm having to work overtime and work in my team, like long nights and weekends as well, which is usually a big one. Really easy ones which could get your customers talking is, how long does it take you to add a new employee to the network? That seems like a really simple question from a networking perspective, but you'd actually be surprised at how many of your end customers will tell you that it takes them at least 3 to 4 hours to get a new employee up. It should literally take like 5 to 10 minutes, which we can do with Juniper Networks with automation as well. So here are some actually future questions which your customers are actually going to be talking internally now. As David said, the Internet of Things is a big topic at the moment. How are we going beyond bring your own device, and how are we going to deal with that from not a security perspective, but actually from a network perspective? How are we actually going to deal with the traffic and the rights and the different protocols on the networks? And this is a really good way to start that conversation. We're also seeing, especially here at Westcoast, a lot of our partners and their customers are moving to the cloud or using some kind of cloud technology, specifically around Microsoft 365. Apologies about that. So it's always good to ask them about that, because that's one of Juniper's big key plays, and what a lot of our competition can't do is that we can deploy the physical kit as well as virtual kit and give you that same level of protection, both from a networking perspective, but also from a security perspective, but I'll touch on that a bit later. So what are the key specifics that are good for the Juniper Networks EX series? So as I said before, that Juniper has a large range of switches that covers almost every deployment need, with many ways to actually deploy it and to architect it to suit your customers' environments and their needs. I like to say that every end customer is a snowflake. They're all very different and unique, but they all need the fundamental same things. On top of that, Juniper's operating system is the same across the entire Juniper Networks technology stack, which reduces the workload and skill set needed to manage it, which is, if you look back to the actual pain points that we are having, it helps reduce the workload and enable to transform a modern IT team from more of a break-fix organization that just tries to make do into being able to take their network into the next level, or being able to do more certs to become more skilled in their day-to-day work. So to summarize, Juniper gives your customers a simple, reliable, scalable, and flexible network, which is easily managed and actually is able to reduce your CapEx as well as your OpEx. The reason why I say that is because for performance to pounds, Juniper offers the highest performance at the lowest cost. Because you're utilizing the same operating system, you're actually reducing your OpEx because you're actually doing more with time, because you don't have to constantly learn more and more IT tech lingo. So I'm not going to cover this one quite so in depth as I did with the EX series, but this is our top of rack range, which is called the QFX range. And this basically powers most large enterprises and data centers when it comes for Juniper Networks. The QFX range leads the way in performance and flexibility in the most demanding customer environments, and usually powers most of Juniper's industry-leading topologies as we design these larger networks. So now we're going to move from switching to firewalls. This is kind of my bread and butter. I've always been a cybersecurity person, so it's always good to talk about a bit about security and where we're going to go on from that. So this is our SRX range. This is our range of firewalls that go from, again, a small firewall you could have on a desk, all the way up to big data center grade boxes. So we start on the top left-hand corner with the SRX 300, which is a 6-port box with an SSP adapter, all the way up to, on the far right-hand side, which is the SRX 5000 range. There's lots of flexibility, both from hardware specs-wise, but also from compliance perspective. All of our boxes comply with most American, EU, and APAC standards, which is usually a bit of a problem when it comes to our competitors as well. So I thought I'd share with you my own personal cheat sheet, actually, for the entry to small enterprise boxes. As we can see here, it really depends on your customer's needs that dictate how to use the table. There's been a number of times where you can't get, say, a line speed that's going into an organization, or you don't know what they're trying to achieve, but they'll give you a user count. So that's what the first row is. It's just to give you a rough guide of how many users and what boxes that could actually lead to. But if your customer needs specifics, like they're looking for web filtering and AV scanning, you can use the next generation firewall, the NGFW row there, to give you an idea of real world speed. So this isn't just fluff. This is Juniper Networks put at the max to their boxes and got it verified by an outside source. So this is all of the boxes at max capacity, and this is true real world speeds. So your customers' firewalls pain points. So what are they, and what are their current headaches? So the biggest headache is that they've got a simple solution that's not fit for purpose for today's threat landscape. Another one is actually a huge lack of resources to manage a large multi-vendor estate, with a lot of maintenance and daily duties being manual. A lot of today's security solutions don't actually talk to each other. So you'll have an AV vendor that sits on your endpoint. You'll then have firewalls. You'll then have CASB solutions. You'll then have your wireless solution. You'll then have this solution, and none of them talk to each other. And that's usually a big pain point when it comes to customers. So here are some simple yet very effective questions to get all the information you need to understand your customers' pains. So a really good one is to just ask them, so what is your network security posture? They'll typically either say that they have one, in the sense that they'll have a specific trusted model, or they'll just say, oh, well, we don't have one, and that gives you a real good road to start talking and having that conversation, like David said earlier on. Another one is when you detect a threat, do you have to shut down the network and bring your business to a halt to resolve it? We've seen this so many times, and it's been going on and on and on for the past like 5-6 years, where an organization has been hit by a cyber security threat and they've been down for maybe 4 days, and they go out of business. I know us at Westcoast, if we went down, I don't think that we could survive more than a week being down before we went out of business. Another one is also to say, what are you doing beyond your layer 1 to 3 and then 4 to 5 firewalling? Are they just going to be using a stateful firewall, which is just your standard kit? Or are they actually looking to go beyond that, say, like using advanced threat prevention, URL filtering, AV scanning, all of those next generation firewall pieces? Because you'd actually be surprised how many organizations are just using stateful firewalls. So the benefit, are you able to enforce security on your switching and routing devices? So that's a key play when it comes to Juniper. Not only are you able to actually block traffic on a firewall, we actually go way beyond that and actually start enforcing security on the firewalls, but also on the network itself and through third-party kit as well. But we'll actually talk about that in next week's webinar in depth. So stay tuned and get registered to that. I'm sure that you'll see that in an email coming out either later today or tomorrow. But the whole point is that the SRX range offers the ability to strengthen any customer's security posture, not only through a winning combination of security and scalability, but also through enforcement on the network. And the main reason why that's kind of important is because what I've been saying for the past like 5-10 minutes is because IT teams are under-resourced and can't afford to wait to understand what's actually happening on their network. What that means is that with Juniper Security is that we can automate security enforcement automatically to actually stop that breaching happening and to contain the threat before your IT team even notices it. So I'm now going to hand over to David again to take you through the competitive landscape and the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Adam. Very detailed insight there onto how to sell and what questions to ask. I think that's really helpful for everybody on the call today. Now, competitive situations, they tend to lend themselves best to environments where an enterprise is perhaps interested in the whole network as well as a security solution. I've mentioned on the last webinar that often I find that if they're looking for a single firewall, it's very difficult to choose nowadays between firewalls. But that being said, how to compete versus the firewall-only vendors? Well, the easiest way there is to mention that Juniper has a strong, as strong, if not stronger, solution for firewall-only deployments. But Juniper can also leverage the entire network, whether it's a Juniper network or a network that's branded differently. Juniper can enforce security across the entire deployment. So there's no challenge there in terms of introducing the Juniper. On the next slide, I'm going to show you pictures. On the next slide, I'll be showing images of which brands I see most often in a competitive landscape. But quite often, I think that it's best to talk about the vendor you're bringing into an opportunity before we do that. Versus networking, other networking brands such as Cisco, for instance, but others such as HPE. The easiest way to compete in that environment is to talk about Juniper having one operating system, using open standards, and having a less complicated product lineup, truth be told, than certainly Cisco, where an ISR and an ASA both are firewalls, and I get confused between the pair of them. As a salesperson, here are those brands we see most often in competitive environments. Again, for each of these, we have an instance where we can sort of talk around them, talk about where Juniper does have a strength compared to any of these. So do reach out to us at Westcoast with the email address at the bottom of this slide. Let us know how we can help you overcome the competition. Now, for specific objection handling is something else. Is another point entirely, of course. So we'll just run through some objections we see very often within the enterprise. Now, Juniper steps recently, there was in the past there have been a Juniper wireless LAN solution that's no longer available. Now, I would say, and I'm going to say right now, that if an integrated wireless is part of the solution and cannot be separated, then it might not be a Juniper solution. However, Juniper does partner with best-of-breed wireless providers such as Aruba, which you can also buy from Westcoast. And that's how Juniper sort of overcomes that type of deployment where they are also looking into wireless options. Now, certainly in the past, this might have been a true one. Juniper in the past, with its first range of SRXs, was considered to be more difficult to manage and difficult to operate than the previous SSG boxes, which is, of course, the evolution of the Juniper SRX firewall range. Now, however, Juniper has reinvented itself within this space, certainly got a lot more energy around its marketing, its messaging, but also the functionality and management of the firewalls. Very recently, Juniper has introduced the same look and feel to the graphical user interface as it had on its central management, just managing the one box that you can, and it also always had a very easy to manage and effective CLI as well. So being able to use the options and get the most out of the Juniper SRX firewall has never been easier than it has now. And it's the message I've really stressed you bring across to your customers is how much work Juniper has done at reinventing and repackaging ultimately the security solution. Now it's time to take another look again at what makes Westcoast the best distributor. So as I mentioned before, Juniper Westcoast has very recently changed its branding, changed its logos, as you can see at the bottom right corner of the slide. And we're really looking forward to taking the messaging further. We're looking forward to growing a huge amount of business around Juniper, especially in 2018. We'll need your help to be able to achieve that. So I really appreciate the fact you've joined us on these webinars now. But why our team? Well, our team has a combined, is the most experienced team currently in the distribution channel for Juniper. We're agile and nimble and all the great things that Westcoast like to say about itself. Largest privately owned business in the Thames Valley region. We're very proud of that as well. Now here's some very handsome smiley faces. Obviously, we're even happier when we're talking to our customers. So please, again, do come out and speak to us. Do get in touch with anyone you know within Westcoast and find out what we can do to help you win with Juniper.
Cool. Cool. So that's us done for the presentation side of this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. If there's any that we don't get to, or if you feel that you have got questions but you could come off of the webinar, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us on the email that's below there or personally, as you see on the slide. We hope that you've enjoyed the webinar today. As I said earlier, that next week at the same time, we'll be covering automated security enforcement using the entire network as a firewall. So we look forward to seeing you then. Tune in next week where we'll be continuing on the series, and have a lovely day.